This channel is proudly sponsored by Bybit, the official crypto partner of Red Bull's Formula 1 team. I've been using their platform for my personal crypto savings over the last few months, and when they got in touch to support the channel, I was super excited. Currently, they're offering you guys a special new promo for the first 100 of you to deposit $10 or more onto the platform. You'll get another $10 free. Also, 5 lucky winners will get their initial deposit doubled up to $1,000. That means if you deposited $1,000 onto the platform using my codes below, you could be within a chance to get another $1,000 completely free. We've seen the landscape around crypto drastically change over the last couple of years, and I genuinely believe it holds an important place in our future. However, please be careful as always when trading, as you are liable to lose money. But if you're interested and you're 18 or older, click the link down below to get started and see why Red Bull and myself, as well as thousands of others, trust Bybit as their crypto. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new video where today we return Season 3 of our F1 My Team Career Mode, and we kickstart the year, of course, back in Bahrain with pre-season testing. The spiciest driver transfers I think I've ever seen on an F1 game. So let's get right into it then. Of course, you know the drill. Timestamps down below if you just want to check out a certain time, but we'll run through from last year's championship order. And McLaren, there's already change at the top. Valtteri Bottas, last year's world champion, has got a new teammate, and it is Zhou Guanyu. Yeah, the former driver lineup at Alfa Romeo is now at McLaren together. After a very strong campaign from Valtteri Bottas last year, really did get the better of Lando Norris and, you know, experience. Persevered over youth, and Valtteri Bottas now can officially call himself a one-time Formula 1 world champion. A very good recovery from McLaren last year. 5th place in Season 1 of the My Team Career Mode, followed up by the World Championship, but they're going to face a lot of pressure as we head into Season 3. The likes of Ferrari, the likes of Red Bull, Mercedes, they are all going to be right there, and it's a case of whether McLaren can keep up the development. Zhou Guanyu was a bit of an odd call in my eyes. You know, McLaren certainly had a lot of big names around the rostrum that could have potentially been brought in to partner Valtteri Bottas, but it was very clear that Lando Norris not happy with the team by the end of last season. So he has moved on, and I'm sure we'll talk about him in just a minute. Heading into the new year, though, McLaren don't look like the formidable force we saw throughout a lot of the midway stage of last year. They're still right there on the money, but it's certainly not going to be a dominant display by them, and they're going to have to work hard if they want to try and get themselves comfortably to the front of the field there. As you can see, the number 1 on the side of Valtteri Bottas' car there. They're a team with so much history. I'm sure we'll still see them fighting right up towards the front of the field, but very intrigued to see how Zhou Guanyu is going to get on after a couple of difficult years down at Alfa Romeo. It just seems like McLaren have got full intention of poaching as many drivers as they possibly can. Let's move on then into team number 2, and probably the weirdest driver lineup we've got on F1 22. Mercedes, of course, George Russell last year did a very good job, almost took it down to the wire between him, Bottas and Charles Leclerc, but Mercedes' reliability really did cost him late on in the campaign. And Lewis Hamilton has left the team. He hasn't retired from Formula 1, but he has left at the moment, so there is every opportunity that Lewis Hamilton can come back in the future. Now, we spoke about Alfa Romeo, of course, McLaren having Alfa Romeo's old driver lineup. Mercedes have got Williams' old driver lineup. They could have had the pick of basically anyone. One of the most successful teams in Formula 1. And if you've been a regular on this channel over past years, you'll know that Mercedes have often made some weird decisions on the F1 games. I remember back on F1 2020, they picked up Luca Giotto. On F1 2021, they picked up Tsunoda, so it has, been a weird time down at Mercedes on this channel. But George Russell, of course, certainly going to be the number 1 in that organisation. How long Latifi will be there, I think, is going to be the real question. You know, place your bets down in the comments below, because I certainly think, you know, it might be the French Grand Prix will we see Latifi being moved on and kicked to the curb. It might just be a case of seeing who is strong and able to come into the team there. But yeah, 2 big reshuffles right at the front of the field. Of course, Mercedes runners-up in both Season 1 and Season 2 of the My Team Career Mode. They desperately need to find that little bit extra and try to push themselves back to the top of the Formula 1 world. So far, the new turbo hybrid concept, of course, with the ground effect, has really not worked out for Mercedes. And yeah, they have just seen themselves playing second fiddle to other teams. They, of course, had a strong opening to last year and then just couldn't maintain it against the likes of McLaren McLaren, Ferrari, and even Red Bull. Speaking of which, Ferrari then next up, of course, with their yellow car. We'll see that for the first few races of Season 3. They have kept their lineup of Charles Leclerc and Daniel Ricciardo, of course. After winning Season 1 in dominant fashion with Charles, he almost brought it back in Season 2 there. 5 wins in the last 6 Grand Prix for Charles Leclerc. Ferrari certainly go into the new year with a lot of momentum behind them, especially as we've seen no major rules overhaul, and whether now the Monegasque driver will be able to crown himself a 2-time Formula 1 World Champion, only time will tell. Ricciardo struggled to find his footing though, obviously after Carlos Sainz left the team to head over to Alpine even for Season 2, and of course then has now officially retired from F1. Ricciardo this year will just be looking to try and close the gap to his teammate there, and of course try and bring Ferrari back a second Constructors' Championship. Like I said, they probably go into the new season with the most momentum. Charles Leclerc, champion in Season 1, missed out by just 4 points in Season 2. He will be incredibly hungry, and of course, yeah, with their new custom paint scheme as well, at least for the opening few races of the year, it is going to be very, very interesting to see how Ferrari get on. They actually do come into Season 3, theoretically, with the fastest car, but of course time will tell when we get into the Bahrain GP how that is looking for them. But yeah, two very, very fast drivers, you know, when they're in the right place, both Charles Leclerc and Daniel Ricciardo can be absolutely rapid. When they're not, though, they can, of course, really struggle. We've obviously seen Daniel Ricciardo struggle so much in real life. And, of course, yeah, Leclerc just could not get to grips with that Ferrari early on last season as well. But, you know, if any driver is going to be able to at least make a challenge for the crown, I think it's going to be Charles Leclerc in that car. Certainly one to watch for the 3rd season in a row. Speaking of things to watch, though, Red Bull, they've had a decent recovery over the last couple of seasons, trying to slowly push their way back up the order. Of course, didn't adjust to the new ground effect regs as well as we would have expected. 3rd place in Season 1, and then, of course, the might of McLaren bumped them down to P4 in Season 2. They had a tough couple of seasons, but it definitely seems like they're able to get their footing in, and Season 3 should be a bit of a return to form. Of course, Max Verstappen, a 1-time world champion back in 2021, before any of the F1 22 My Team career mode did kick off, and we saw Red Bull stick to pretty much Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez throughout the entirety of last year's game. We might well see the same thing here. Verstappen and Perez back together once again. You know, I feel like I've said that so much on previous F1 games as well there, but it's clearly a lineup that's working. Perez was a lot closer to Max over the course of last season. And yeah, really for them, you know, they want to try and get back to winning ways, of course. Did take that one win back in Sao Paulo late on in Season 2, but you know, it's only a handful of wins so far in the F1 22 game for Red Bull in this career mode. They desperately just need to work out what they're missing, what they need to unlock to really try and push themselves back towards the front of the order there. But, you know, they're consistently fighting towards the front. The regulation changes do seem to have worked quite nicely for them. You know, they have got a lot of room for progress as well. And, you know, I think heading into this season, they are currently sat provisionally P2 overall in the championship. Of course, they did make good progress last year, but it was completely shouted out by Ferrari's rise back to form, and of course Charles Leclerc's mega late race championship challenge that took him down to the wire. Red Bull will be hoping that this year they can try and get a couple of wins early on the board, and hope now that their new ground effect concept is going to really start trying to carry them, because, you know, Verstappen, he's a man that can pretty much go anywhere in Formula 1. You know, he's certainly a top driver, and Red Bull have got to be careful. If they can't return to winning, you know, he could be off down to somewhere else in the near future. Having a look then at Alpine next up, of course, after losing Carlos Sainz last season and Fernando Alonso the season before, they were once again struggling to find a replacement, and luckily for them, it has come in the form of Lando Norris. So Lando Norris now joins Esteban Ocon down at Alpine. A very interesting lineup. This one I'm quite excited for, to see how they got on, of course. Alpine last year, you know, 5th place in Season 2, 4th place in Season 1. The signs haven't looked good, but they have been a lot closer to the front towards the end of last year. Of course, we saw Carlos Sainz riffing on podiums like they were going out of style late on last season. Of course, yeah, they really did have a car that was very competitive. It's just whether they're able to bridge that gap. It did kind of feel like Alpine and 2&2 Motorsport got very close to that big four, but of course we know the absolute might that those teams have, and of course how much money they've got behind them as well. You know, the budget cap can only do so much. Alpine desperately need to try and refocus on their engine and try to improve it as well. Of course, both their car and at 2&2 Motorsport, the only Renault E-Tech powered cars currently on the grid. But yeah, Lando Norris down at Alpine, a new team for him. Of course, intrigued to see how he's going to get on against Esteban Ocon. Of course, Esteban was a bit sort of silenced by Carlos Sainz last year. You know, we spent the last couple of years just kind of getting quietly beaten by Spaniards there. But, you know, a young lineup, a feisty lineup, certainly going to be an interesting one. You know, Alpine, like I said, have made such strong progress over the last couple of years. It might not look it on paper, but they, I think, are going to be one to watch as we head into the new year. Of course, they'll definitely want to be ahead of the midfield. You know, we always hear plans about their 5 years and things like that. You know, their 100 race plan to get back to World Championship, and whether Lando Norris was part of that to begin with or not, he certainly is now, and it is going to be very, very intriguing to see. I think they are probably going to be our biggest rival. Luckily for us, though, at 2&2 Motorsport, we've kept our lineup. You know, we confirmed that quite late on into last year. What we haven't kept, though, is the paint scheme. Yes, we're rocking the all-new Zhou Guanyu-inspired Chinese New Year, I think, dragon livery there. You know, we'll run it for a few races, see how we get on. I thought it looked quite cool, and then we might go back to something a bit more conventional a bit further down the line. But, of course, Season 1, it was just about setting ourselves in, trying to make sure we could beat some of the backmarker teams, and, of course, we managed that in P8. Season 2 was certainly about trying to get towards the front of the midfield. Of course, we finished last year on a high with that podium in Abu Dhabi, our first of the F1 My Team career mode here on F1 at 2022. And of course, we signed Oscar Piastri early on last year. He then left the team. He wasn't interested in staying with us throughout the second half of the season, so we brought in Teo Porcher on a bit of a whim, and he has absolutely revitalised this team there. Points on, I think, 4 occasions towards the end of last year. His best career result of P8 in Abu Dhabi as well. I was very, very happy that we were able to keep Teo Porcher ready for Season 3, because there was some interest, of course. Alfa Romeo, you know, Teo Porcher for a long time was an Alfa Romeo Junior, and the fact, you know, we did have to pay him some big money, but I think Teo Porcher is worth it, and we're going to continue to try and develop him to make sure he is fighting right towards the front of Formula 1. Of course, last season, P6, you know, we weren't quite top of the midfield. Alpine did very, very well in that regard, but it certainly felt like, you know, us and Alpine, both, like I mentioned, with those Renault E-Tech power units, have made very, very good progress and are hopefully going to get closer and closer to those big 4 teams at the top of Formula 1. You know, we're working quite closely with Alpine still. You know, we want to get this power unit into fighting form there, and hopefully, yeah, we can work with them and hopefully not trip over each other all too much. Of course, sparks did fly on occasions between Alpine and 2&2 Motorsport last year, but, you know, hopefully we'll both remain professional and try to work together to make sure we bridge that gap, and then hopefully both can fight for wins. Speaking of Oscar Piastri, though, he has found a new home ready for Season 3 of this career mode, and he has found that down at Alpha Tauri, rather interestingly. Yes, he is now officially a Red Bull Junior driver, is Oscar Piastri there. An interesting call, you know, represented by Mark Webber. I was quite surprised he was willing to bring the young Australian into the Red Bull family, but of course we've seen the success of Ricciardo. You know, every Australian that's driven for Red Bull at some point or another has won a Grand Prix, and maybe, you know, Red Bull sort of looking, Perez is getting older. You know, if Oscar Piastri can really deliver in that team, you know, he could be a big, big match for Max Verstappen. Of course, we've seen so much success from Oscar in the junior formulas, of course. Riffed off championships in Formula Renault, Formula 3, Formula 2, and then, of course, didn't get the call-up in real life, of course. I'm excited to see how he gets on in the real world next year, but I do think Alpha Tauri is going to be a very, very interesting one. Of course, a torrid first season in 10th place. They're 7th place next season. They did recover quite nicely and were comfortably ahead of the backmarket cars there, but just nowhere near the levels of Alpine and ourselves come the end of last season. But Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda is a very, very interesting lineup. Of course, losing Pierre Gasly, though, is probably quite a bitter blow for the Alpha Tauri team. Of course, he has been a constant for them over recent years, but you know, we all know Pierre Gasly had to get out of that junior program. He had to try and progress and move somewhere else. And of course, we'll discuss where he's gone in just a moment as well there. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, Oscar Piastri, of course, 2 big rivals back in their Formula 2 days. And yeah, certainly 2 young talents that I think, you know, we've seen Tsunoda have a couple of seasons to go at it and see how he gets on. And now it's going to be a case of whether Oscar Piastri can do the same, whether he can sort of cement himself as the number 1 within that team. And maybe, just maybe, could be looking at a call-up to either replace Perez retiring or maybe Max Verstappen if he decides to go somewhere else, of course, if Red Bull can't give him a winning car that he feels he deserves. Next up then, we have got Aston Martin, and a couple of very, very quiet seasons so far for Aston Martin. 9th place in Season 1, 8th place in Season 2. Of course, lost Sebastian Vettel at the end of the first season, and an interesting call to bring K-Mag into the team, but it has worked out quite nicely, of course. They've had a couple of decent results over the course of last season, and Aston Martin are still in a weird sort of stage of trying to sort of solidify themselves back in Formula 1 and work out really where they sit. Of course, we all hear the big stories from Lawrence Stroll about trying to invest as much money as he possibly can into the organisation, but I don't think any of us are really convinced Aston Martin are going to be fighting right towards the front of Formula 1 at the moment. And if pre-season testing is ending to go by, they're still right there. You know, they're not quite backmarkers just yet. But they're certainly not going to be fighting for wins and podiums anytime soon, especially when we've got so many strong lineups in front of them. Of course, Aston Martin, we're probably going to see Lance Stroll there throughout the entirety of F1 22. But yeah, intrigued to see how long Kevin Magnussen hangs out. Of course, had that one successful season back with Haas in Season 1, and of course then, yeah, moved over to Aston Martin. I'm sure he got quite a pay for doing so as well there. And yeah, of course, the feisty Dane, along with the Canadian, is hopefully going to continue to deliver more and more success over the course of the season. But yeah, how we'll get on, how Aston Martin will get on, you know, if they go from 9th to 8th, maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to get 7th at the end of Season 2 here as well. But of course, only time will tell for them. And yeah, a decent lineup. You know, they've got plenty of experience now between the pair of them, but they just need to focus on trying to build up that team and hopefully get Aston Martin, you know, even if it's just fighting for consistent top 10s against first, and then, of course, looking towards the future, you know, Season 4, Season 5, we could see them fighting for a whole lot more in Formula 1. Next up, then, is Williams, and now officially Williams has become a background for people that have been destroyed by Max Verstappen at Red Bull. Yes, Alex Albon, of course, has had a couple of very strong seasons with the team. Bizarrely, Nicholas Latifi is the one that leaves, and Pierre Gasly comes in to replace him. 11th place in Season 1 of this career mode, but 9th place in Season 2. They did move past Alfa Romeo and, of course, Haas there, and yeah, it's a gamble from Pierre Gasly, but I certainly feel like I said, you know, he had to get out of that Red Bull Junior program there. We've sort of seen Albon flourish in real life because of it, and maybe we'll see Pierre Gasly do the same thing in F1 22, my team. Very interested, though, to see how this is going to get on between these two. Of course, we've seen so often comparisons being drawn between Albon and Gasly, of course, when they were both teammates with Max Verstappen in the past. So this is now really a question of which of these drivers is actually faster. You know, they both sort of shown flashes in the pan of brilliance in the past, but yeah, now it's going to be a really tough test to see which one of these two drivers can deliver and sort of cement themselves as the number one within the team. Of course, nice for Williams, still trying to make progress, back up the order, still bringing big investment into the team. And, you know, now they've got two capable drivers, it feels like, then certainly at the very least they're going to be able to try and fight, you know, with the likes of Aston Martin, you know, with your Alpha Tauris, things like that. I'm sure both Gasly and Albon will quite happily wave as they try and drive past an Alpha Tauri over the course of the year. Pre-season testing doesn't look like they've made huge jumps forwards, but it certainly doesn't feel like they've lost out too much either, and it is, yeah, going to be very interesting to see who will come out on top down at Williams. Let me know down in the comments below. I think it's going to get spicy down there. I think we could see some fireworks, but as long as they continue to make progress forward, I think, you know, that competitive inner team rivalry will bring out the best with what they've got. Moving on, though, down to Haas, and unfortunately one of the teams, you know, the feel-good story of Season 1, you know, recovered from a disappointing 2021 to 6th place at the end of 2022, narrowly missed out to McLaren. But as McLaren upped 4 places in the Constructors' Championship, Haas went down 4 over the course of Season 2. It just felt like both of those Ferrari-powered cars, you know, Haas and Alfa Romeo, could not get to grips with that new power unit, and it really did cost them a lot over the course of the year. Of course, Haas did get some points on the board. They've kept their driver lineup of Mick Schumacher and Felipe Drugovich. Of course, yeah, Mick Schumacher spending quite a lot of his early career down at Haas now, and of course Drugovich, we've seen him now win the real-life Formula 2 championship. He has certainly got some pace in that car, and hopefully, you know, again, we're going to see maybe this year Haas able to fight for points a bit more consistently. You know, you never want your rivalry just to be defined on who gets a couple of lucky results here and there. But yeah, again, Haas, they showed flashes of excellence. 5 points scored over the course of last year, just 1 point behind Williams at the end of the year. There, I think there was a lot of concern down at Williams, the fact, you know, Haas were picking up a couple of points here and there later on in the campaign. But yeah, whether we're going to see Mick Schumacher or Drugovich really try and prove themselves to some of the bigger teams, you know, maybe one of them could go to an Alpha Tauri. Of course, it is just whether we see a big reshuffle at the top of the sport once again as well. You know, that'll be the real debate. But Haas need to make good progress. You know, we can't see them fighting, you know, really for the Wooden Spoon Award anymore. Of course, you know, we've seen so many financial concerns for them in the past. And, you know, I want to see Haas fighting there. It's been brilliant in real life 2022 to see them fighting back towards the midfield. Hopefully that will continue in the My Team career mode. But pre-season testing, I'll be honest, isn't looking great for them. It could be a battle just for survival and to hopefully pick up a few points here and there. I really do want to believe in Haas, though. And moving on, though, to our final team then for the end of Season 2. It is, of course, Alfa Romeo there, and they have got a new driver in Dan Ticktum, who will join Robert Schwartzman there, of course. 7th in Season 1. Again, you know, Alfa Romeo, a pretty similar feel-good story in Season 1 as what we saw with Haas. But yeah, like I said, both of those cars really struggling with the Ferrari power units during Season 2. Of course, losing Zhou Guanyu, yeah, it kind of felt like last year Alfa Romeo really did lack direction with two very inexperienced drivers. Of course, Zhou Guanyu only had the 1 season under his belt. Robert Schwartzman came in as a rookie, but at least, you know, Alfa Romeo are bringing in rookies and giving them a chance in the world of Formula 1 there. So, you know, whether we'll see Schwartzman or Dan Ticktum move up the grid further down the line, we will have to wait and see there. But yeah, intrigued to see, of course. Big rivals in previous years in Formula 2. Dan Ticktum, of course, kind of accepted his F1 dream was over a couple of years ago and spent a couple of very, very successful seasons over at IndyCar, which has given him the chance to come back to Formula 1 in this alternate universe. Robert Schwartzman, of course, went off and helped Ferrari with their LMDH program for a couple of years, and then when they got rid of Antonio Giovinazzi from the organisation, you know, an FDA driver was something that Alfa Romeo were quite interested in. You know, the option for some cheaper power units was always going to be helpful, and that's why Schwartzman has still got the call up. But yeah, Alfa Romeo, the only team last year not to score any points, really did struggle, of course, spent a lot of last season just holding back and waited to put development in for their Season 3 car. Hopefully that's going to pay off for them, and, you know, I want to see every team fighting for points week in, week out, and, you know, Alfa Romeo was certainly the team that never, ever last season looked like they were going to be on the precipice of points really at all consistently. But yeah, I think Schwartzman and Ticktum have got their work cut out, but I'm feeling quietly confident for Haas as we get ourselves into Season 3 of the My Team career mode. But there we go then. Our brief and quick rundown of every team before we jump into the new season. Let me know what you're hyped for down in the comments below. Of course, you know, we've seen Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes now. There is very, very little to tell between those big organisations at the top of Formula 1. Of course, Alpine and ourselves ever getting closer to those top cars as well, of course, as we unlock more from the Renault power unit and everything like that. Season 3 will once again feature a full 22 race or 22 round 25 race calendar, of course, with those three sprint races at Imola, obviously Austria and Brazil. I still cannot find a way that you can change them, unfortunately, and I'm really hoping at some point down the line that coders are able to put Shanghai and Portimao into career modes as well. But thank you all so much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure you leave a like and get yourself subscribed as well. And we will return very, very soon with more F122 content. We'll be back tomorrow, Bahrain Grand Prix. Make sure you're here, get yourself subbed for it. You definitely don't want to miss that. None of these videos would be possible without the help of our channel members, so a massive thank you to all of the names you see on your screens currently for helping support the channel. You can join them by clicking the join button down below, and yeah, thank you once again to everyone that continues all the insane support on my work.